I am the War Chief.
Hello, my friends, and welcome. Let me just start off by saying that this is not a reaction, a Hololive reaction, nor is it related to Hololive in any way. But essentially, it's our Feb special because, as you know, Feb is the month of heartbreak or true love, depending on which side of the fence you find yourself on. Now, Val and I decided to make a video talking about relationships, what do you call it? Like toxic beliefs about relationships and, some relationship advice from the questions you guys have sent in.
Yeah. And it's unsolicited advice. It should be noted. Like, we're just kind of talking, and if it helps you, then I'm happy it helps. So I decided that it would be great to do to kind of go over some of the toxic beliefs about love and relationships that are kind of perpetrated in the media, in movies, on social media like Instagram, and have just kind of been passed down generation to generation, and kind of go over, like, is that really something that a quote that we should be living by, or in the modern times, can it be altered to be, more appropriate for modern day relationships?
Also, a quick side note, this little fuzz right in front of us is the mic that's centered, and we don't really have a better place to place it. Yeah. So you're just going to have to deal with it.
His little afro.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be debunking the myths first, and then we'll go into the questions that a handful of you sent in. Right? So Why don't you start this off?
So the first one is quite a common quote. You'll hear this a lot. And I think it was even quoted by a famous celebrity at one point. I don't know if it was Marilyn Monroe. I can't recall. But it's essentially, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me. Now, from a really zoomed out perspective, this seems fine and dandy because it's true. Like, if you can handle me when I'm at my lowest and when I'm struggling and I'm poor and, broke, then when I'm wealthy and happy and thriving, you've really earned your spot. Like, you've really earned the right to be by my side. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, if your worst is abusive, toxic, controlling, addictive personality, then I don't think you can expect someone to just ride out your worst in order to be with you at your best. Sometimes it's up to you to kind of fix yourself and adjust yourself and be better, and not just expect someone to ride it out. And once you're better, now they can, now they've really earned that right. What do you think?
Essentially, the most important thing about this quote is always going to be context.
Yes.
Because it's like, you're saying, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. But like we were just saying, what is the extent of your worst? Like, is it something truly detrimental that's harming your relationship and stuff like that? Because if it is, especially like if you're in a family, you have kids, and your worst is affecting everyone negatively, I think that at that point, something does need to be done. And you can't really use this quote to kind of misdirect the attention on yourself, because it is still your responsibility, since it takes two to tango, and in certain other relationships, especially if you have a family or whatever, that increases even more.
Yeah. And to be honest, sometimes if someone can't handle you at your worst, it may be because they recognize boundaries and they know what behavior they will or will not tolerate. So sometimes it's really just them setting a boundary, and your worst is crossing that, and they're not having it.
In the same way that they're trying, when you say this, you can't handle me at my worst, that's putting the responsibility on the other person to adjust to you.
That's true.
But it's also your duty to make adjustments for them, because it really is a matter of making the right compromises, because that's really it. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship.
Yeah.
And also, if that's what you go into, you may want to temper your expectations.
Yeah. So the next one is this is a very, very common thing. I'm not sure really when it started, but it's definitely something I've seen on Instagram. People use it for best friends, but they've also used it for partners. And it's the idea of the ride or die.
Mhm.
Now, in theory, it's fine. Like the idea of like this person will ride with me, like they will always have my back. I can always rely on them. They are my rock and they are my person. I think that's okay. But I think again, this is really based on context because I think it's great when you support your partner and stand by them in a discussion. Like if your family is against them and you stand by their side and you stick up for them in
You
those
stand
scenarios.
up for them. Yeah.
But if your partner is clearly doing something that is wrong or you don't necessarily agree with, it doesn't fit in with your own values, and you would just stick by them just because they're your partner, that's your ride or die. So it's kind of like you telling me you want to rob a bank, and I'm like, okay, I'm your ride or die.
Right.
So this one is a definitely context. But yeah, I feel like this one in general, especially when used on social media, I'm sure they don't actually mean ride or die. It's more like just you're my bud, and you're gonna be there for me.
Yeah. Yeah, my take on this with the whole ride or die thing is it's actually a little bit related to the previous point about handling you at your worst. But with the ride or die, it's like you really have to understand that people do have their boundaries. And if someone says that, you're not going to stand by me when I'm doing this, this, and this, but what you're doing is harmful. What you're doing is not healthy anymore.
Yeah.
What was this? This kind of like in Euphoria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the show Euphoria, where it was Rue and Jules, right? And, Rue was a drug addict, and her significant other thought that it was getting so bad to the point where, there wasn't really much they could do about it. So she actually told
Rue's
mother.
Yeah.
And while a lot of people, this ended up dividing a lot of opinion.
Yes, because some people saw it as like, oh, she's a rat, she's a snitch. Like, how could she betray Rue like that by telling her mom? But it's also like, what do you expect her to do? Just watch Rue kill herself
slowly,
with drugs, and just like, how far do you want it to go before she steps in? And
because sometimes not standing by your partner is also your own way of showing that you care. Through protecting them from their own bad decisions that they maybe aren't understanding at the time that they made said decisions.
True.
So, once again, context.
Yes. All right. So this next one is close to our hearts and our experiences.
It's been something we've talked about quite a bit between the two of us.
But it's the idea that your partner should know what you need without you having to say anything, or that they will intuitively know how to love you. Now, this was an issue because I think for me as a woman, it had kind of been ingrained in me that, like, as a hopeless romantic, I wanted to be swept off my feet. I wanted a man that, like, right away from the get-go knew exactly what I wanted. He would bring me flowers and knew exactly when I needed affection and what kind of affection I wanted. And that became a problem very quickly in our relationship because, he's not a mind reader. And it's not fair for me to expect him to predict my every need, especially if I don't verbalize those needs. So, like, there are some days when I would have a really bad day. I would come home, I'm frowning, I'm distant. And he would, he can kind of pick up on the fact that I'm not in a good mood, but he wouldn't know exactly why. And he wouldn't know what kind of support to provide in that moment unless I tell him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because at that point, most of my, for me, my context is that I really wasn't very experienced in dealing with a lot of very emotionally charged situations in my life. So we, the way I grew up, it was like, it wasn't necessarily a get over it kind of mentality, but it's like, okay, if someone comes home, we kind of just like let him simmer, and then maybe we'll talk to you when you're a bit better.
Mhm.
But that was clearly not what she needed. But she never told me that.
Yeah.
So I just did what I thought was right with, from my experiences.
Yes.
But it clashed completely with what she needed from
Yes.
me. And when she lashed out at me at one point, I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not a mind reader. I need you to tell me how best to help you."
Yes. And best support you. Yeah.
Inversely, sometimes when I would get, I would have my temper flare up and all that stuff. She would try to, there were some ways that she would try to diffuse the situation that were only actually making it worse.
So I think this also ties into like understanding each other's love languages
There we
and
go.
understanding like what each person kind of needs. So for me, I'm very much like a talk it through. I'm very emotional. I'm very empathetic,
touchy,
very sensitive.
yeah.
Yeah. So I need a lot of like hugs and affirmations.
Physical
and I need you to
touch.
I need you to talk this through with me. Whereas for him, when he has his moments, he needs a chance to like just sit with his emotions, process it, and then we can talk about it later.
It's like for me, it's like give me time to settle down, because if I try to talk to you while I'm in this state, I'm probably gonna say some things
that you don't mean.
I don't really mean, that'll end up being hurtful.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of a deal. Like, remember one of the things we also did when we first started a relationship. This is also going into another myth that healthy couples never fight. And that is absolutely the biggest friggin' lie that the movies are gonna tell you. You will clash.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And it'll get ugly. Like sometimes it gets ugly,
But one of the things we did, to address that before was we actually established what we called the rules of war.
Yes.
And it seemed weird to be talking about it, but you need to be able to establish how you're going to fight.
Yes, we talked about it really early on. Like I would say, a month or so
within the first month.
Yeah, within the first month of us being in a relationship. I mean, it was a little bit weird because it's like we're preempting arguments. It's like we aren't even arguing yet. Why are we preparing for arguments?
But we're glad we did.
Yeah, I'm very glad we did, because we really set the rules for like, okay, one, like, there's no name calling. In this relationship, we don't call each other names. There's no ridicule. There's no low blows.
Yeah.
We don't cuss at each other.
Nope.
We don't yell. So that was another rule. We do not yell. We are adults. We have civil, mature conversation.
Right.
And if you're not ready for that, tell me, and then we'll talk about it later. But you're not going to yell at me.
Right.
And I'm not going to yell at him. Another one was we're not going to compare our relationship to other relationships.
No.
Like when we're in the midst of a fight, you know how you can sometimes let slip like, oh, well, her boyfriend didn't do that. How come you're like this? How come you can't be more like him? And that's really hurtful, because you're essentially saying you wish he wasn't who he was, and like you want him to be like someone else. And instead of just working through it and being kind about it and just kind of empathetic about it. I also think, just going back to like the having someone be a mind reader and understand you. I think it can be dangerous, because every time that they don't fulfill exactly what you think they should have done or said, it leads to disappointment on your end. And then that disappointment builds into resentment. And then suddenly it's going to be the most random of fights that's going to bring it up. You have it built up, and then let's say one day he doesn't run the dishwasher,
right?
or just the lightest and smallest of things, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna be like, "Why do you never listen to me?" And it's just gonna all come out, and he's gonna be like, "What?
Where did this all come from? I just didn't run the dishwasher.
Yeah,
where is all this coming from?"
It's actually a lot more than that you just haven't been saying, waiting for him to know what you want. Yeah.
So there's also that thing too about being the mind reader thing, about having those unhealthy expectations too, where in that let's say that their love language, the way they express themselves, just so happened to be within your realm of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
When they suddenly stop doing that,
Yes.
you're like, what happened? What happened? What went wrong? Is he mad at me? Is she mad at me? What happened? But, that's why it's really important to establish these things early on, because sometimes really the smallest misconceptions can spiral out of control,
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
That actually leads quite perfectly into, arguments, but also the idea of you don't hold any feelings back. You have to be painfully honest, brutally honest. Now, I'm all for honesty in a relationship. If anything, I think it is one of the building blocks. It's essential.
Mm-hmm.
But arguments can get heated, and you have to be able to expressing your thoughts is important, but you have to be able to do it in a way that's also kind and considerate of your partner. Because if you do it so bluntly and without regard, it affects your partner and it kind of turns it into an unhealthy situation.
Mm.
And also, when you're saying things very bluntly, you also have to think about, is what you're saying actually, are you trying to be helpful? Is this constructive? Or is this just trying to break him down? Yeah, and hurt his feelings or really get back at them in some way. So this ties in perfectly to what you were saying about the rules of war, the rules of engagement that we set early on. Yeah.
The thing is, the key word here that you should take note of is be painfully honest.
Yeah.
You can be honest without being painfully honest about it.
Yeah.
There are ways to deliver your message. Remember, what we say, it's not what you say.
It's how you say it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With your delivery, there is a way to be honest and let down harsh truths on your partner without wrecking them emotionally, honestly. Yeah. There are just ways to say these things and also find the right time to say it. When you guys are already in the middle of a super heated argument, that is not the right time to bring up what you thought was a flaw in this person's personality from day one, because that's just gonna escalate
and get ugly.
That's really gonna get ugly. You do it when you both are in a good mental space where you're both open to hearing each other out, and you're okay to hear something that you may not necessarily like to hear, but is necessary for you to improve yourself as a person.
Yeah.
So let me see.
So the next one,
go ahead,
is the idea that you just give in the relationship. You kind of just love bomb them and don't expect anything in return. Now, you'd think this is like a default, right? Well, or you'd think that people don't do this. You think people know, love is a two-way street, but you'd be surprised how often it happens where, I honestly, in college, I used to even believe this thing where there was this, I don't know, it was this article or something that went around where it's one person always loves more in the relationship.
And when you start talking that way,
yes,
stop.
Because
step on the brakes.
Yeah, because now you're
keeping score and comparing.
Yeah, because I used to believe I'm much more affectionate and sensitive, therefore I probably love him more than he loves me. So it's 60-40, 70-30. So therefore I'm doing so much more work, and I'm putting so much work into the relationship because I feel like you only need to do 30. And I'm okay with that. And I think that's bull. I think relationship it's nothing if not give and take. And
it's a constant give and take. You never keep score. Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean a one-to-one trade. He and I, we do a lot of if I cook, you clean.
Yeah.
Or if I do this, you this. But
right.
When he lost his job, I took on the role of being the breadwinner. And
I'm proud of her for it.
But it's never something that I held against him. And he found ways to contribute to the household, to our relationship.
Essentially,
Yeah.
while she was out, I would be the one who would be, handling the house. I was the house husband.
Yeah, and it's not demeaning in any
No.
way. It's not like I'm saying like, oh, you're less of a man because you're not bringing home the bacon.
There's also no
Yeah.
room for toxic masculinity in this relationship, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to the give everything and expect nothing?
Oh, I mean, give everything, expect nothing is one of the most unhealthy things that have been introduced and made regular by a lot of romantic movies. You're usually like in a lot of these romantic movies, it's always just from the perspective of one person, right? As they're courting the other person. And like they're pouring themselves all out, like they're really doing everything they can. And you don't really see the perspective of the other person. So it creates this unhealthy stigma that it's like, oh, it's really just has to have all this one effort. All this effort is coming from one person, and then the other person will eventually reciprocate.
Yeah.
No.
Or this, what always makes me laugh too is like when in a movie or show, whatever the media may be, but it's like one person in the relationship, like you said, pours themselves into the relationship, and they're always going out of their way, like they buy them gifts, they do this, they do that, and all the other person has to do is do one nice thing, and everything is like, oh, they're so sweet. It's like, that's like the bare minimum that they just did, and you just did all of this, and they did this. So.
Yeah, just be careful if you start going down this path of giving everything and expecting nothing, because that could also open you up to abuse from the other person who could, we give people the benefit of the doubt, but if you happen to like someone who isn't necessarily the best person for you and you do this, you're just going to get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So it's always good to reassess. It's the biggest irony here, but it's like in matters of the heart, it's also good to consult the brain. Occasionally. You don't want to be like a computer,
No.
But for matters of the heart, if something feels off, you might want to step on the brakes and consult yourself. It's like, is this really, the right thing?
Yeah, and are you really happy with this setup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, this is a really good one.
Okay. So this next one is the idea that jealousy means love, or jealousy means they're into you, or jealousy is somehow a compliment. Now, over the years, I've heard a lot of people glamorizing the idea of jealousy by saying that, oh no, it's a sign that they love you. Oh, he's just protective of you. They care so deeply that they only want you for themselves. They don't want you really talking to other guys. To me, that sounds terrifying. Like, personally, I think it's a sign of insecurity. I think it's definitely a show of lack of trust. And it keeps very close company with possessiveness.
I was just about to say, do not confuse the possessiveness for being overprotective. There is a fine line.
Yeah, I think it's... with us, again, we've established this early on in the relationship. It was kind of like we're very much an old couple.
We're an old spirit. We're old spirits.
So when we went into literally a month into the relationship, where we were like, okay, what do we do? And there was no really honeymoon phase for us. But you have a lot of girl friends.
Yeah.
If anything, most of the people he hung out with were women. And I had a lot of guy friends.
Yeah.
And there was no jealousy. Yeah, I remember people would ask me, actually, like, if he was going to be like, hey, I'm going out with a friend of mine one-on-one, and it was a woman. People would be like, you're okay with that? I'm like, of course I'm okay with it.
Yeah, because she'll do the same thing with one of our guy friends too. And it's like, enjoy your little hangout.
And we trust each other. I don't have any doubts. And if I did, I would say something, and if I did have questions, I would ask them. But I trust him, and he's never given me a reason to doubt. And if someone is giving you a reason to doubt, always you're allowed to ask. I think it also depends on how you ask it. But jealousy certainly isn't a compliment. Like if he was possessive, like show me your phone, show me who you've been texting, who are you, who's calling you.
That's a one-way ticket to divorce town.
Yeah, and that's a huge red flag. I have a password on my phone, so does he. We know each other's passwords, but even if I didn't, I never go through his phone.
Yeah,
It's
more like she'll just be more like, "Hey, could you open my phone? I got a text message from someone.
Yeah.
Can you just read it to me?" And then on my end, it's like, "Hey, we're in the car," and I said, "Could you just
pull up directions,
pull up directions or
play
unlock it
music.
phone? Yeah, play Spotify from
Yeah.
here." And that's really it.
Yeah.
It's not as if she's going to go through my phone and go through my text messages and all that stuff. And when it reaches the point that you have doubts about your partner and you feel the need to check their messages and those private things,
something's wrong.
Something's definitely wrong.
Yeah.
Now you have to be able to determine if are you the one who's being possessive or are they being a bit suspicious?
Yeah.
And
That's true.
if, regardless of what position that is, when that comes up, always talk about it in a very civil manner. The moment you become accusatory in your line of questioning and become like you're interrogating the person, they're gonna get very defensive as well because like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
Whereas if you just talk like mature people.
For example, if he's getting you talk to a lot of gamers and you talk to some of them are women.
Yes.
And I remember you would get messages and be talking to someone at like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
3 a.m. And at first I was kind of like, who are you talking to? It's like middle of the night. And he'd be like, oh, I'm talking to a friend of mine. I'd be like, okay. And then if I ever felt that insecurity creeping in, the next day I would just ask him like, hey, you said you were talking to someone, late at night. Can you tell me about them? Can you, like what games are you playing? And then when he goes into more detail, oh yeah, we're playing this and this was happening. Then I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it puts me at ease and it clarifies everything. It doesn't let me just like, my mind wanders and I'm like, oh,
Right.
he's talking to all these different women. Like, yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Not. I think we've pretty much covered the basis for the jealousy part. But yeah, the essence there is don't confuse their possessiveness for being overprotective.
Yeah. And I think something to note is be wary of small jealousies. Because I think sometimes people only look at it as that big jealousy, like, oh, you're talking to another man or oh, you're talking to another woman, you're flirting. But it can start small. It can start from like restricting who you talk to. Like, oh, I don't want you talking to that friend anymore. I don't want you hanging out with that guy anymore.
That's when you should watch out.
Yeah, so it starts there. It's like, oh, I don't really like that friend. I don't really want you talking to her. Then it can move on to regular check-ins. Where are you? What are you doing? Let me know when you get home. Let me know this. Let me know that. And then it can go to monitoring your phone, your social media. Then they'll talk about like, why did you like this person's photo? How come they like your photo? And then it just spirals and spirals. And now, so just be wary of those small jealousies that will build up into much scarier levels of possessiveness.
Communication is always.
Yes.
Next.
All right. So next is the idea that you can fix someone with your love. So the first thing I'll say is if someone's not ready to help themselves, no amount of love is going to change that. Love is great. Love is wonderful. Love lifts us all where we belong. But love is no substitute for professional help. So, like the example you gave with Euphoria.
Yeah.
Everyone in the entire world could want Rue to stop doing drugs, to get her life together, to be happy, successful, thriving. But if she doesn't want it, nothing anyone says or does is going to change that. And she really has to want it for herself. Because if you tie your growth to someone like, oh, I'm only getting better because of him. I'm only doing this because of him. What if he steps out of my life? I'm going to shatter. So it has to really be for yourself. And I think when you attempt to fix someone, especially when you think that by marrying someone they're going to change, or you think that, oh, he's a bad boy now, but I'm going to turn him into a good boy. You know,
you also, on that note too, we're just all related to this, you also don't get into a relationship to fix the person.
Yes.
You enter the relationship because you already, they're already a good match for you and they're good for you. But you don't go into a relationship to fix someone or turn them into your ideal. Because at that point, what you're chasing is more like a projection of what you want rather than the person themselves.
Yes.
Which is really unhealthy as well.
Yeah. And you have to remember, this is a person, not a project. You know, for me personally, when we started, I mean, even when we started our relationship, I had just came off of like having a breakdown in college. Emotionally, I was kind of all over the place. And I struggled a bit, but I did make it clear that I don't need or want him to save me or heal me, right. Handling any of my trauma or anxiety or struggles or any of that. It's not his job. His job is to love me while I heal myself and deal with my stuff. And his job is just to be there and be supportive and take care of me when, within reason.
Within reason.
But his job is not to like, oh, you're feeling this way, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to do everything, and that would be it's not fair for you.
No.
Yeah.
That would be her putting her own responsibility for fixing herself onto me.
Yes.
But I'm here to support. I'm not here to do it for you.
Yeah. He's my partner, not my therapist.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's not fair for me to suddenly ask him to take on that role. Also, I'm sorry the light is constantly changing. I feel like the sun keeps coming in and out. So
it's just the nature of this living room.
Yes.
Okay. We go to the next one?
Yeah. I feel like we can almost skip that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go to...
Oh, boy.
This one is a big one. But it kind of ties into the last one, which is having a baby or getting married or doing something drastic will solve your problems, your relationship problems.
No, it will not.
If anything, it'll make it worse. Marriage will not make your partner more committed.
No.
In my opinion. If you guys have stories about that, you can prove me wrong, like arranged marriage, I don't know. But to me, if your partner isn't already committed to you, marriage isn't going to change that.
For us, the funny thing is, essentially, when we got married, our friends were asking us, like, oh, how's married life like?
Exactly the same.
And I was like, nothing's changed. Essentially, just being married was just a formality to us.
Yeah.
And our dynamic has not changed. No. It's been, as the way it's always been. It's like, why, the fact that question was asked really did tell me that there is this misconception, there is this stigma attached to, like, when you get married, it's like, oh, it's going to change the dynamic of your relationship. Not necessarily. And in fact, it's probably a deceptively unhealthy way of looking at it. Like, sure, I understand that there are certain things that change when you get married, but it shouldn't change the dynamic of your relationship completely,
Yeah. I mean, what I would expect changes, well, I mean, for me, what I expected would change was like, we're living together, we move in together, or, Asian families, at least in our culture, sometimes the kids stay with their parents up until they're married. So, maybe when you're married, now you move in, you adjust, you build your life together.
Right.
But as far as like commitment is concerned, or, or I don't know, like when I got married to you, I didn't expect, oh, now that we're married, he's going to stop playing games. Or, like that would have been truly unrealistic. Yeah. And having kids.
Yeah, that's an even worse one.
Certainly isn't going to bring a fighting couple closer together.
If anything, you're just gonna give that kid up. Yeah, I don't know. I'd feel bad for the kid, honestly.
Yeah, because I think both marriage and having a child. I mean, I feel like having a child is a much bigger decision, but it's not something that I would that wouldn't be like my first suggestion.
Oh yeah,
you
no
know,
way.
like, oh, you're having a rocky relationship. Try having a child. And that'll fix everything. Because if your relationship is already strained, adding new responsibilities and expectations to the mix is going to make it worse.
Mm-mm.
And I'll just add this on, just to put a cherry on top. Don't let anyone influence a decision to have children or to not have children when you're not ready.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like the relationship, you're not ready, it doesn't matter if someone's nagging, if people ask a lot of questions like, oh, you're 35 and you don't have kids. If you're not ready, you're not ready. And that's okay.
Mm-mm.
You can still have kids when you're 40.
Yeah. It's not their decision to make. Are they going to raise your kid or you?
Exactly. Yeah. So it has to be on your terms. And I also think it has to be something that you both, not just one or the other, but both have to be ready. Because
absolutely.
It's a lot.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And marriage too. Marriage is not, I mean, as much as, we were saying like who we were and our lifestyle as a couple did not change, but marriage is it's a commitment as far as like we actually signed a document and it's legal, and you have to kind of take into account, especially where we're from in the Philippines, there's no divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly would not go into a marriage lightly, especially if there's even a shred of a doubt that you may not end up or want to be with this person or you're not sure. I wouldn't, because getting a divorce, there is no divorce.
There is no.
So the only options are like legal separation, which is, I think, like you're still technically married, you're just separated, or annulment.
Annulment, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So
very limited options back home.
Yeah.
So
that's that on that.
Mm-hmm.
This next one, I feel like this is going to be a hot take.
Yes, this is a big one.
So this is a hot take from me, but I don't agree with the idea that you should never go to bed angry. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because I don't think everything can be resolved by brute forcing your way through a conversation. Mm-hmm. Would it be better if we could resolve it before sleeping?
Absolutely, sure.
But is it realistic to be able to expect to do so when it's already past midnight, or you have to help with the kids, or you have work in the morning and
you're both tired, you're not in the right mindset?
Yeah, like, would I like to solve this? Sure, but is it realistic or can I expect to have a decent conversation when we're tired, we're angry, our tempers are flaring, we have things to do in the morning? No. I don't think it's fair for either of us. So what do you think?
Not to mention that the way, there are certain ways to diffuse a lot of tension. And maybe, there's a good chance too that if you're able to rest up a little bit, you wake up with you're in a better mental space, you're in a better condition to talk it out. Yeah. But like I said, it's also contextual. It's a case-to-case basis. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you also have to pay close attention to what we were saying, where the love languages and
the fighting languages.
Your how you fight.
Yeah, mm-hmm. How you argue. For me, yeah, like I said, I'm a talk it through, almost like a therapy session kind of thing. And he's more like, leave me alone. I need to process how I feel, and then I'll talk to you. Or yeah, and usually, I think it's important because I would recommend, actually, instead of saying we're never going to go to bed angry, I would rather have an agreement where we never go to bed after an argument without mm-hmm. deciding when to have the proper conversation.
That's a good one.
So it's like, we're not just tabling it and then never talking about it again.
You don't sweep it under the rug.
Exactly. Yeah. We're still going to talk about it, but not right now. Mm-hmm. So let's go to bed and let's pick this up tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Or let's pick this up tomorrow night, whenever. But you have to promise that there's going to be a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. We're down to
Another
our
one.
last two myths.
Yes,
and then
last
we'll
two.
answer your questions. It's kind of like a radio show now.
So this one is interesting. And it's the idea that it is your partners or others. This could be actually be applied to friends. But it's their job to break down your walls. Now, I really used to believe this when I was, I think, in high school and college. You know, when you're kind of going through your adolescent, like hormones are up and down, you're kind of emo, you're kind of just going through it, and occasionally you go through bouts of like light depression. I used to cling to this quote that I once read, which was like, sometimes we build walls not to keep people out, but to see who cares enough to break them down. And I used to love that shit. Like, I was like, oh, yes, I'm going to build my walls and isolate myself. And if someone checks up on me, then they truly care. And I don't think that's fair. People have other lives, okay? Like, they have whole lives outside of you. And to be frank, everyone's been hurt. Everyone has some degree of trauma, heartbreak, anxiety, toxicity, betrayal. Like, everyone's experienced some kind of pain. But it's no one's responsibility to heal yours and open up your heart again. I would say, if anything, if your walls are still so high up, it may be a chance for you to be alone, to kind of look inside yourself and process your pain. And then you learn through therapy or whatever method you use to trust and love again. Now, I will say, like, this, again, I'll put this in context, because like context matters in this, because if you're, obviously, if you're like in the deep throes of depression, if you really, really need help, seek help. I'm not saying you have to just go it alone and don't talk to anyone or anything. No, if you need help, reach out.
There is no shame in seeking out professional help when you need it.
Yeah. So if you need help, reach out. But just don't be disappointed or constantly expect that people are going to always be checking in, or people are always going to, because people have lives. And it's kind of like when people get upset when you don't greet them on their birthday, or like you didn't write a post on Facebook about their birthday. Like, I'm sorry, I had to drop the kids off, or I had to do this, or I had to do that. Like, my life doesn't revolve around you. I care about you nonetheless.
Yes.
But it's not fair that I'm the one constantly, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this, and she was talking about it on a more heavy emotional part.
Yeah.
But even on the surface level, this is going to be a bit of a Hololive tie-in, because the community will be familiar with this. But it was a very noted thing that Pecora for the longest time was very much a very introverted person, just really kept to herself. And it wasn't anyone's job to break down those walls that she's established, but it's like you've seen her growth and how she's become more comfortable, letting other people in and, talking to other people. I know that a lot of us like credit that to Muna, but it's really more Pecora who, put herself out there.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that her friendship with Muna blossomed into this kind of thing. And now she's still, of course, the social introvert that she is. She's still a little bit socially awkward, but it was really her effort that got her to this place, to where she is now. And what we were saying, it's not anyone's job to break those walls down. And when you have those friends who will check up on you, don't treat them as your therapists. They're not professionals. They are caring friends and they will be there for you, but there is no substitute for professional help. Your group of friends, as great as they are not going to
They're not equipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I had to learn myself, because dealing with a lot of friends of mine who had certain troubles, and it's like, I can only give you advice based on what I know, and a lot of the stuff I say comes from my experiences, not your own. So I can't ever really be equipped to fully handle and help you deal with your problems, But if you see a professional, then will.
Yeah. And the very, very last one is the idea that if it's true love, you will never be bored. Now, this is false.
Bullshit. No, no.
It will definitely be dull sometimes, but I would describe it as the best kind of boring. For me personally, it's my favorite aspect of the relationship because this is the part that they leave out of movies.
Mhm.
You always see the love story, like the meet cute and how they fall in love. There's always some kind of thing that's keeping them apart. They overcome it. They get married, or they ride off into the sunset.
All the big events.
Yeah, and then it kind of ends when they ride off into the sunset.
Because what happens next?
Yeah,
That's the real challenge.
Yeah, because what happens next is the next 50 years of marriage. What happens in the next 50 years of marriage? You do the same thing over and over. You get married, you have kids, you bring them to school, you go to work, you come home, you make dinner, you do it all over again. You go on vacations, you meet the same people for dinner. There's gonna be repetition, there's gonna be dull moments.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I think the beauty of a relationship is that not just like all this, the butterflies in the beginning of the relationship, the honeymoon phase, but also like the companionship that comes with those mundane days.
Mhm.
Like I love it because like we don't even have that many shared interests, frankly.
Oh, we could not be more different in terms of interests.
Yeah, we're usually in two separate rooms. He's out here, I'm over there, or I'm sitting on the couch and he's here. But there's something so comforting that like that's my person.
Mhm.
And there's this movie, I think it's Shall We Dance, and I love a quote from, I believe it's Susan Sarandon in that movie, but she was saying how in a marriage you're not just like, you're witnessing someone's life. You're asking them to witness all these mundane moments in your life and to bear witness. And I thought that was so lovely because that's what it is. I'm bearing witness to your growth. I'm bearing witness to your failures and pains and your everyday, things.
I would say the way to correct this quote, if it's true love, you'll always choose the person.
Yes.
It's a conscious decision every day to choose the person who you're with. I'd say that's true love.
Yes.
So
after all that,
that does it for the myths that we've had that we were able to collect from all the corners of craziness in this place called the internet. So I received a handful of questions. I got like 3 questions from some of you, and we're going to do our best to answer them. But let me just preface all of this by saying that, of course, relationships are a case-to-case basis. There is no catch-all solution for any sort of for all relationships, because otherwise we'd all be doing the same thing. So take this as you will. This is coming from our experiences, which are going to be different from yours. But we hope that whatever insight we can provide can prove to still be helpful. All right. So our first question is it possible to stay friends for exes? What advice will you give to ex-lovers that ended peacefully? That's the key word there, that they ended peacefully. Well, would you like to start this off? Well, it's just because you and I,
we're in sync.
The quick answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely yes.
You can stay friends.
Because the key word here that you gave us, and this is the most important thing here, is that it ended peacefully. When you say it ended peacefully, it ended in a civil manner. It ended in an amicable manner. You two are still on talking terms. I would assume that the breakup was not messy. It didn't, it wasn't anything like that. But I will say an important thing involved in this is to let your partner know. If you have, you do have an ex-lover or whatever, you have an amicable relationship with them, you also need to make sure to inform your current significant other and let them know what your situation is. Because what we were saying earlier about, the jealousy thing, if you're able to dispel those notions before they even come up, then all the better.
Yeah. And the advice I would give to ex-lovers or, ex-partners that ended peacefully is I think after a breakup, especially immediately after a breakup, or in just in the wake of that scenario, give each other a lot of time.
Yes.
And you can still communicate, but it really depends. Some couples, when they break up, they have to cut all ties. Like, even if it ended amicably, they have to like delete pictures from Instagram, no contact, delete their number, throw away their things. Like, and sometimes that it's just what they need to kind of flush you out of their life and move on.
And it's not something you should take personally. It's just that different people have different ways of dealing with all of these things.
And some people, they can go from relationship right back to friends in no time. Like in a snap, they're like, okay, we're just friends, But for others, it's very hard to kind of draw that line again. Like, oh, so I can't just like hug you whenever I want. Like you have to kind of stop yourself from like touching or, things that you regularly and just kind of.
Essentially, you have to learn how to break your habits.
Yeah. And you need to learn how to kind of, I guess, interact with that person again. Because you went from friends, and then when you go in a relationship, your interactions change entirely. You're not just like, oh, hey, bro. Like, it's different. And then going from relationship back to, hey, bro, is difficult.
It's also very daunting.
And it's also difficult not to be awkward. Honestly. So I think
that's why the time helps.
Yeah. So the time helps. And also, I would say if you ended peacefully and you still want to be friends, you still want to have conversation. I would say try to really, at the end of the day, you still want what's best for them. You still want them to be happy. You still want the best things for them. So try to keep the conversation really on friend things,
there are just certain topics you don't cross at a certain point.
Yeah, and try not to let it get to a level that will spiral back into potential relationship or friends with benefits. Just kind of try to keep it like on a level that you're comfortable with. And like he said, disclose to your partner. I think that's important. And I would say, like, especially right after, maybe try not hanging out one-on-one.
Yes, that's also a big thing.
Because, listen, we'd like to tell ourselves that, oh, we can just be friends again.
But we are emotional beings. And of course, a lot of especially if you ended amicably, I'm sure there's still a lot of emotional attachment that's left behind.
Those feelings. I'm like, just sitting on the couch, just chilling.
Is that everything you want to say?
I think that's about it. But if they have any other questions, feel free to drop in the Discord.
The next question is, someone said, asking for a friend.
Wink, wink.
How do you overcome the torpe trope? Now, for those of you unfamiliar with this word, this is a Filipino term that we use to describe the social awkwardness when it comes to initiating a conversation with the opposite sex. Usually for guys talking to girls. Like, they can't initiate a conversation with the girl that they like.
Yeah.
And how do we address that?
Dun dun.
Well, on my end, this is something that is actually near and dear to my heart. Because in high school, man, you would not have believed that I was the biggest torpe around in high school. Like, I could not initiate a conversation with a girl to save my life. And it didn't even have to be because, like, I liked them, I had a crush on them or anything like that. I just couldn't. He
also went to an all-boys high school. So
it was an all-boys school from grade school to high school. Yeah. So my interactions with girls were pretty much just relegated to my family, my cousins, And then I suddenly go to another, go to college and it's co-ed now. It's like, you got girls and the guys there. And I'm like, oh. So what happened? Well, it was a skill that you had to learn. Because the reason why I wasn't familiar too much with, establishing, conversations with girls was because I just didn't grow up, interacting with them as much.
Especially at school, where so much interaction happens.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of your conversations and stuff, a lot of the habits that you develop usually do come from your interactions with your friends in schools. And if you're in an all boys school, or if you're in an all girls school, also conversely, then the way you're going to be interacting with the opposite sex when it finally comes to that opportunity is going to be a bit rocky
Awkward.
and awkward. Inevitably, it will be awkward. So, how do you get rid of that awkwardness? Well, you were in a co-ed school.
Yes.
So, why don't you enlighten us?
Well, I would recommend honestly giving yourself challenges. So I have never really been awkward speaking to the opposite sex personally, because again, I went to co-ed school from grade school through college, so it's very comfortable for me to be in a room with both men and women. But I would recommend, like, for example, honestly, being able to speak and be comfortable in conversation. Small talk, it's a skill. You really learn to navigate conversation, and you learn to read the room and read your audience. So let's say you're talking to a girl, start by challenging yourself. Like, okay, this week, I'm going to start 3 conversations. Doesn't have to be a conversation about romance or even asking them out. It can literally just be like, hey, did you see the homework for today? Right. Or, hey, did you watch that show?
And it doesn't even need to be initiated with, the person who you have, who you are looking at right now, like someone you have a crush on. Just with your friends in general, practice the small talk.
Or with new people.
Or with new people. It is definitely a skill.
Yeah, it's something that's practiced. That's why there's a lot of public speaking classes and things like that, because it's something you get more comfortable with. You learn, you adjust, you learn to to really navigate that conversation. So I would say, first challenge can be this week, start 3 conversations, and they have to be with people who are at work that you don't usually talk to, classmates that you don't usually talk to, maybe just different people. And then the next time could be like, okay, so next I'm going to, ask someone if they want to hang out, or I'm going to try to, just slowly but surely put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be the next day you're a changed person, because that's never going to happen. No,
really is a slow thing over time.
Yeah. So just,
you need to get to learn it.
Yeah, slowly but surely, and just baby steps outside your comfort zone. It just little things. I think that builds up to lessening confidence. That social awkwardness and certainly confidence.
Yeah.
And I will add, as a woman, this generally applies, especially in the Philippines. This word applies to men, but as a woman, when being approached,
they can tell if you're scared. They can smell your fear.
They can smell fear. But I think it also has to do with, like, you have to be, you kind of like, there's something truly attractive about confidence. I will tell you right now, like, the men that I've been attracted to in the past, not all of them have been like, they're not necessarily conventionally good looking, built and all that stuff. No, most of the time they conduct themselves with an intelligence and confidence, and just the way they conduct themselves is very, like, comfortable in who they are. If you're comfortable in who you are, then it radiates, and I can read that off of you. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what kind of, well, at first I didn't like it.
She found me incredibly annoying the first time.
Well, I'll put it in context. When we first met, he was so boisterous. Like, he has this big hearty laugh, and he commanded the conversation. He commanded the room. He really was like just a bright star. And to me at that time, I was very self-conscious, low self-esteem. Seeing someone who could be so carefree about who they were, I resented it. And I was like, oh, who's this arrogant prick? Like, who does he think he is?
Hey!
It was at the time, I love you. But so at the time I was like, oh, I don't like him. Like, it read like he's trying too hard.
Like I was a poser or something.
Yeah, like he was trying too hard to be like that. But then when I actually met him and got to know him, I was like, oh, so this is just who you are. And you're being exactly who you are. Unapologetically, like, aggressively who you are.
Yes.
And that was so endearing to me. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, you're goofy, and you like exactly what you like and you take no shit from anybody, you know? Like, you take no shit, but you do no harm, you know?
Yeah.
And he liked wrestling, and he would talk to me about wrestling. He liked this, and he would
I
talk
liked
to
anime.
me
I was always a gamer, so yeah.
Yeah. So I would say be yourself. Don't try too hard to be someone you're not. And,
For the matter of confidence, sometimes you can fake it till you make it.
that is true.
Act confident until you
are.
You are. Honestly.
Yeah.
That's how I got past my stage fright when I had to recite stuff in front of the class.
Yeah.
I walk right up to in front of the class, like, with a proper stance, like looking real confident. But deep inside, I was like, aqua levels of, oh my God, kill me.
Hyperventilating.
Yeah. Aqua levels of hyperventilating just to.
Yeah, I remember I was the same. I would walk up. I used to be in the debate club, and we used to debate literally in front of the whole school. Like, they would put debate tables on stage, and you're debating into a microphone with the entire school looking at you.
I would die.
And I remember what I would do was I would just, it's almost like you turn on your alter ego, like you're like, okay, I got this. And you just, I remember I would just talk and conduct myself as if I'm confident. And then I remember afterwards, like my hands, the paper I'm holding is damp. Because my hands are so sweaty, my armpits, I'm a mess, but I look pretty good up there, and I sold that shit. So you really can't fake it till you make it.
Yeah. I hope that was enough of insight. And for our last question today, is about childhood friends. So it says here, the question we have is, my crush is a guy whom I've known since the first grade. I don't know if we should just stay as friends or not. I'm afraid of breaking our friendship. What should I do? Well, for this one, we have a counter question for you to help put things into perspective. If said friend of yours, said your crush, your childhood friend, if tomorrow you learned that he's dating or he's in a relationship or something, how heartbroken would you be over it?
Yeah, or how upset at yourself would you be for not saying anything?
Considering how much time you've had. Now, if the answer is you're going to be torn up about it,
and devastated.
Yeah. You'll regret it for God knows how long, I would say it's worth taking the risk.
Yeah, I'll kind of draw on our relationship as
Go ahead.
well. And so I have always been a person that if I like someone, I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me being very...
She was definitely someone who broke the meta in terms of like the culture in the Philippines, because it was always the guy who would, court the girl and all that stuff. And she's like, I take no shit from anyone. And it's like, I'm just gonna go right up to you and say it straight to your face.
Well, and because for me, it's more, I do it more for myself than I do the other person. Like, it's because I need to get it off my chest. I just need to tell you so that I don't have to keep like torturing myself about it. And if you feel the same way, or you have any inkling that you feel the same way, great, that's amazing. Maybe we can give this a try. But if you don't, then you're lost, and he and I were friends. We are friends.
Yeah.
But
we started off as friends.
And when I told him, he wasn't ready. And that's okay. At the time he was like, no, I'm just not ready. But later on, our friend, and the key there is we didn't make it awkward.
No.
He didn't make it awkward. We just acknowledged like, oh, okay, he's not ready. And I'm not going to force it.
Yeah.
She
interpreted it as me saying no.
Yeah.
But what I was saying was that I just really wasn't ready because I was not in a good headspace at the time.
Yes. So for me it was a no, but I wasn't going to like force you, or I wasn't going to like make it awkward, because to me I valued our friendship. So to me, like, even if we can't be in a relationship, that doesn't mean I don't want to be your friend. It doesn't change who you were or are.
Right.
And then later down the line, our friendship got even stronger. We became like best of buddies. And eventually he's the one that came to me and was like, hey, I actually really like you. And can we give it a try this time?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think if anything, I'm happy it kind of ended up that way so that we didn't just start when you weren't ready.
Yeah.
And it would have.
But I do also understand that our case is a bit of an exception.
Yes.
So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. In your case, like, you've known this person since first grade. I think, I will always say it's worth the risk because I don't know. Would you rather live with a what if, like, oh, I never told him. He could end up marrying someone. He could end up having kids with someone else. And then you'll be 50 and you'll be like, dang, I should have said something.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't know. It just felt like funny to me. Anyway.
I feel like I'm being made fun of.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would always recommend taking the risk. And the key there is also from like when you tell him, it shouldn't be like a guilt trip thing.
Oh yes.
Like I like you therefore. Or kind of I don't think you should pose it as like an ultimatum. It's just like hey, there's something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. And I just felt like now is the time to tell you. I'm not expecting, anything in return. I just wanted to get this off my chest and see how you feel. And then, you just let them know. And honestly, if you guys are as good of a set of friends as I hope you are, if he does feel the same way, I am thrilled for you.
And if he doesn't,
wonderful. And if he doesn't,
it shouldn't be made so awkward.
Yeah, or it shouldn't shatter the entire relationship because then you can say, okay, I respect that. I still love you. You're still my friend. Still got your back. And maybe it's going to be awkward for the first week.
It will be a bit awkward afterwards. There is no such thing as a fully rejection that's like, oh, okay, I'm good. And it's like, no.
That shit stings. But it doesn't necessarily mean the entire breakdown of years of friendship. It's just another thing that you work your way through.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially what I'm saying is do it.
Yeah. In so many words, go for it.
Yeah. Go for it and then hope for the best.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, you're still awesome. And you'll find someone who likes that awesome.
Yeah. So I guess that about does it for that's all of the questions we have. So as we're gonna end this, we're just gonna give you guys some takeaways. Just to sum it all up. Because we've been here it's really like a podcast episode right now. It's like a little radio show. Been at this for a little over an hour.
Yeah.
So just give you some takeaways for us. The biggest thing we learned, especially because, like I said, we were in a long distance relationship for 3.5 years.
Yeah. So in case some of you don't know, we've been together for 9.
Yeah.
Going on 9 years. We've been married for 4. Going on 4. 3 of those years, we were 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5
we were in a long distance relationship. I lived in Chicago. He lived in San Francisco.
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway, the biggest thing we've learned through all of this is that the most important thing in any relationship is communication. Is just all forms of communication. How you say your messages, the timing of your messages, what you say to the person, like how do you maintain a relationship over long distance, all that stuff. And then communication is the biggest key.
Yeah.
And then for sustaining a relationship, we've found that there are really 4 wavelengths that I feel like people take for granted.
He creates this formula.
Yeah, that's just me being me. But essentially, you want to be consistent in terms of your perspectives regarding 4 things, which is money, family, religion, and to a certain extent, politics.
Yeah, money isn't gonna be as big a thing
this
in the
isn't
beginning of your relationship.
Mhm.
Like if you're boyfriend, girlfriend, you're just dating, money's not gonna be as big of a thing that
Mhm.
comes in during marriage.
Right.
Really, like when you're, or even if you don't get married, you're just cohabitating.
Mm-mm.
That comes in because you're building a life together. How do you both feel about money?
Mm-mm. It's like, are you going to maintain separate accounts and then
Yeah.
you have a joint account,
Mhm.
or is all of your money completely separate, or is all
Yeah.
your money going to be pooled into one thing?
Mhm.
Like, there are so many ways to go about it, but the most important thing is you agree with whatever system you decide to choose.
Yes, and I think it's important also to kind of have discussions about how much you guys make, because for a lot of people, they get a little insecure when they hear one makes significantly more than the other,
Mhm.
or significantly less than the other. And sometimes there's a discussion about, like, if one makes significantly less, how do they contribute to the bills? Is it an even split 50-50, or because you make less now it's 70-30?
Mm-mm.
So that's all included under that umbrella of finances and money.
Yep.
But it'll definitely come up like later on in the relationship, but it's important to note.
Mm-mm.
And then the next is
The next one is family.
yes.
Now, this has to do not just with how you are with your significant other's family, but how you feel about establishing your own family. Because if one of you, let's just put it simply, if one of you wants kids, the other wants nothing to do with kids,
Ooh.
that's an instant deal breaker. Especially if none of you are willing to compromise on those things.
Mhm.
You know, so those are how you establish family. That's something that should also be agreed upon from the very start, and you should make that very clear, especially when your relationship is becoming more serious to the point that you might be considering marriage and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Inevitably that discussion is going to come up, so definitely that has to be talked about as well.
Yeah.
And then
Actually,
go ahead.
just to add to like the family discussion.
Mm-mm.
For us, that came up really early in our
Yes.
relationship. A lot of things came up early in our relationship. But
we
that
were forced to grow up very quickly.
Yeah, we were very mature in this whole thing. But for family, it came up really early, because we had both kind of decided if we were to date someone, if we were going to be in a relationship, it wasn't going to be dating.
Mm-mm.
Like, we never technically dated.
No.
When we decided we were going to get into a relationship, the goal is endgame. The goal is marriage. The goal is life together. We weren't interested in anything short, anything uncertain.
Mm.
So very early on, we were very clear. Like, like you would say, like, I'm this. This is how I feel about something. And I'd be like, okay, this is how I feel about something. And we wanted to be very upfront with each other, so that it's early enough on that, like, if you want to get out, you can get out. Like,
Mm-mm.
like if
you give the
early
person a
on-
way out. Yeah,
yeah,
essentially.
like early on, I tell you, oh, I want to be a housewife.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to work. Nothing. You support me. You sustain me.
Mm-mm.
And you're like, absolutely
Right.
not.
So that's what I mean. Like, also the
yeah.
family dynamic.
Yes. Yeah.
Then one more thing under the family thing is, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but honestly, we're mature enough to talk about this. Your sexual compatibility with the other person goes a long way. Honestly.
And it's something you have to be comfortable talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like if you aren't mature enough,
Yeah.
like if you can't even say the words, if you can't, like,
it comes off very awkward.
yeah, if you can't even talk about your needs, your wants, your desires, if you can't have a adult conversation about what satisfies you, what you don't like, then that's something to really reflect on, because you have to be able to be honest. And
Right.
your partner, like, again, they're not mind readers. You have to be able to communicate your needs.
Mhm.
So,
okay. For the third thing, this is especially important with certain cultures,
Mhm.
but religion.
yeah.
There are certain people who are from particular religions that are not in favor whenever you marry someone outside of your religion. There are some of them who kind of don't care, but there are some of them
Mhm.
who want to establish that it has to be a Catholic thing, and you bring your kid to a Catholic school,
Yeah.
and all this and that. And if you can't agree, if neither of you can agree with that, if that's not something you can compromise on, let's say you are both in, mixed religion marriage, and there's just something that cannot work because of that, then that can sometimes be a deal breaker as well.
Yeah. I would actually add to this, like, just because it's so closely tied
Go
sometimes,
ahead.
is culture.
Yes.
So culture and religion.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying like, I'm not picking a side in either of these things. It's just like, it's something important to discuss because, for example, like Asian marrying into like a Black family.
Right.
And there are things about an Asian family that he's taught me about. And there are things about Black culture and being like, like my family and what our traditions that I've taught him about. And I think the key there, if you really want it to work, is you have to be open. You can't, the problem sometimes is people decide like, no, this is how we do it. And that's how it's going to be done.
When you're uncompromising.
And, it's not going to work. You have to be open-minded. You have to be like, oh, okay. And then if you plan like raising a family, it's important to talk about what religion will our children be? What pieces of my culture, like if we have children, will they learn Haitian? Will they learn the Haitian side, or will they only learn the Filipino side?
Yeah.
Will they learn Creole and Tagalog? Will they, so these are things that you want to talk about. And then, especially when you come from cultures that are very like strong, like really defined cultures, like Filipino culture, Black culture, Japanese culture is very defined. And some, you teach your partner about it and you be open with them, because it's also unfair. Like you're bringing them to a family party and you didn't tell them like, oh, the tradition is you wear red, and they're like in black.
And there are sometimes, even if you give them the orientation, they still get culture shocked when they're actually there,
Yeah. And I think it's also important that when it comes to religion, family, and culture, that you defend and stand by your partner in those cases, because that's your partner. And it's not the ride or die thing. It's more like you're bringing them into your culture and showing them, but also protect them from people who are like antagonizing them just because they're not. Yeah, just because they're different. And then
the fourth one, this is, I would say, the least important, because this is something that a lot of people can easily compromise on. But this is for the case that some people can't. The fourth one is going to be politics. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of like what your politics are going to be, but it's more like, regardless of what affiliation you're on, which side of the spectrum you're on, you need to be able to respect the other person's politics. Now, if you're on the same political belief or ideal system, then that's usually easy for you. But if it's different, is that going to be so much of a deal breaker for you? If it is, then if you're very much firm in your beliefs and you are uncompromising and all that stuff, and the person is on the other side of the fence when it comes to their beliefs, that is going to cause a lot of conflict, inevitably, a lot of friction. So you have to be ready to deal with that. For some people, that's fine. There are going to be some people who are too firm in their beliefs and are uncompromising. It's like, no, you have to believe in, in what I believe. And that's just the issue there. That's why I put this here as more like a footnote, because this is the easiest thing for some people to compromise on, Yeah.
And for me, I think when it comes to politics, it also has to be taken into account that politics can change. And like, when we entered this relationship, I was much more far left, much more like purely liberal. And now I'm much more moderate. And views change, opinions change. And you have to kind of also be able to like listen to your partner and not just like antagonize them the moment that they don't agree with you or the moment that they have like even if it's like slightly different from you or drastically different, like you have to be able to listen like, oh, why do you believe that way? So I am very annoying in that I always ask why. He said something. He's like, oh, I don't really think that's how it should be. And I'm like, why? Why don't you think that way? And it's not because I'm trying to like
antagonize.
Antagonize or be annoying.
Yeah.
Like I want to understand
She's just genuinely
why
curious.
you're like that. Yeah, or why you think that, why that interests you, why it doesn't interest you.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And that gives me a better understanding. And
so I think we've gone for
I know.
hour 20.
If you're still here,
Congratulations. Yeah. So I would say that pretty much wraps up. That's pretty much all we have to say about that.
Yeah.
Just those are the last few takeaways that we can give you.
I have one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And I give this advice to everyone. But it's one of my favorite pieces of advice. But it's you can grow separately, but not apart. So I say that all the time because some people, like when they feel like they're not at pace with their partner, they're, whenever any of those things that we just talked about don't seem like to perfectly mesh, people are like, oh, it's not going to work. We're growing apart. Like, no, you can grow separately as two different people, two different sets of interests, two sets of beliefs, but that doesn't mean you have to grow apart.
That's pretty yeah.
Yes, that's all I'm
okay. I didn't mean to like cut you off like that. Are you
done?
No.
I'm sorry.
It's just we've been running for a bit of
I know, I'm sorry.
With the time. So yeah, it pretty much wraps up our, I guess, relationship advice column.
Yes.
Relationship podcast.
Unsolicited advice with Joe and Val.
Oh God. Yeah, pretty much. So if anything, I hope you guys were able to enjoy that anyway. Please let us know what you thought of this format.
Yeah.
I know it ran a bit long. And for those of you who asked the questions, I hope we were able to give you enough insight. And, maybe we were able to help you in some way, shape, or form. And
let us know if there's anything else. If you do like this format, let us know if there's anything in particular you'd like us to talk about. It doesn't have to be Hololive related. Yeah. I think
it can just be this kind of a podcast format where you can give us a topic and we can just give you, share some of our insights about it. If you like the format, you can just let us know. You can like and subscribe, leave us some comments and stuff like that.
And if you don't like it, then thank you for tuning in to the first and last episode of.
If this doesn't work, then this is the first and last episode of our podcast, I guess. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Congratulations if you've lasted the whole way through.
Yes.
And that about wraps it up. So with that, I would say our session is adjourned. Everybody, please take care of yourselves, and we will see you in the next one. This is Senator War Chief and Val signing out. Bye-bye.